Sunflowers, maybe some of my favorite flowers. They're so beautiful and they add so much vibrancy and happiness to any bouquet that you bring into your home space. Hi, this is Margaret Byrd and welcome to Color Quest. And welcome again to Bailey Farm. I returned here after several trips in the late summer to see what is left of the remnants of their sunflower patch. They have sunflowers here that were topping 15 feet and glorious about a month ago. And now, as you see behind me, they are fading and ready to rest for the season. The sunflower seeds that I collected from here were black, and I thought perhaps they could be related to or even the variety of Hopi sunflower seeds. Not sure. The farmers here didn't know either. So when I'm curious about something, best thing to do is test it out. So join me as we look at the Hopi sunflower seed and see the unique color that it will bring to our dye pot. The Hopi sunflower is an heirloom crop that has been grown and used for many purposes within the Hopi tribe. The Hopi used the black sunflower seed as a dye source for their crafts of basket weaving, and eventually when sheep were introduced into their space, they used it for dyeing wool. The Hopi sunflower seed has a name in the language spoken by the Hopi people, and I want to recognize that here. So this is the way in which the Hopi call the sunflowers that we're talking about today. So one thing I try to do when I am out in a rural land or any land that I am sampling from nature in is to do some research about who or what groups of people had lived, farmed, and loved on a particular land long before settlers arrived. It's wonderful to take the time to acknowledge that there have been people thriving in a location, living from the land and calling it home. The region where I live is coastal Salish land, and I'd like to thank all of the ancestors and people who have lived and respected the land for centuries. If you're interested in knowing more about the land where you live, there is a wonderful resource, an incredible interactive map where you can identify the area that you're living in and know more about the indigenous groups that lived on that land prior to it being colonized. I will leave a link below in the description where you can access that map. It is really an amazing treasure of information, and one that I hope that you will take seriously when you are enjoying what nature has to provide in any specific area. Now, since I wasn't sure if the sunflower that I had was in fact Hopi, I decided to also purchase the seeds from Tceqa Qu Seed Farm in Oregon. They are one of a handful of seed producing farms that have heirloom crops such as the Hopi sunflower. So today on Color Quest, I'm going to look at both the sunflower head that I harvested here as well as the Hopi seeds and see if there is a difference. And maybe I will be surprised to find that the black seeded sunflower that I was lucky enough to find here at Bailey Farm is in fact a Hopi variety. Not sure, let's see. How about those purplish hues? Pretty remarkable color, right? I was so excited. I have wanted to try this for so long. So I feel incredibly grateful that I was able to purchase the seeds as well as test out a found sunflower head filled with black seeds. I don't know enough about the varieties of sunflowers to know. The results were quite similar. So there's a chance that this is actually a Hopi sunflower here that I harvested from Bailey Farm. I will never know. But I do know that both the seeds from Tceqa Qu as well as the flower head both produce a beautiful variety of colors in the purplish, neutral, and even pushing into the brown realm based upon how it was processed. So I decided to try the two different methods, one being a pour over, which blasted the seeds quickly, almost blanched them with heat, and then cools down and soaking for a number of days. The heat extraction process, I was very careful with my heat. I made sure that I never went above just a very low simmer. However, as you saw in the samples, really the heat extraction version, the one on the stovetop, did in fact push the color into more of a brownish neutral color. Now, many blue, purple, and red dyes receive their color from a compound called anthocyanin. Anthocyanin is very sensitive to heat, and so when you're using dye material that is receiving its color from this compound, you have to watch your heat closely. And as you saw in today's video, it definitely made a difference. Even though I was cautious with my heat, purely exposing it to heat for longer periods of time caused the anthocyanin to dissipate or to shift its color. The other thing to note, and I didn't test it here, is that anthocyanin is pH sensitive. So most likely, if I were to introduce either an alkaline or an acid to this dye itself, it would shift colors. I'm not going to try that today. There isn't a lot of seed that I had available, and it is somewhat precious. So I'm going to keep its color unique to the different ways that I extracted it this time. But keep that in mind and maybe test it out if you have access to more or want to see what other colors you might get from the Hopi black sunflower seed. I saved a few seeds for myself. Maybe next summer I can actually grow a few. I think it's pretty exciting. But if you don't have access, know that there are a handful, as I mentioned, of seed companies that are growing organically and can provide dye flower seeds to add to your garden. I'll put a list of those down below. Grand Prismatic Seed out of Colorado, a seed company that I have seen referenced time and time again. So check them out. Also, Tceqa Qu is the one I chose. That is a farm in Oregon, a little bit closer to where I am living. And they also rank highly in the world of providing heirloom seeds for dye plants. Next week on Color Quest, I would like to take you on a quick trip to one of my favorite parts of the world and trying another echo print, this time with autumn leaves. Not sure what kind of differences they will bring. I have read that tannins could be different, and as you know, whatever you do, you're always going to get something different. I do have a video here where I looked at echo printing with leaves from the summertime, and now I'm curious to see what they will look like after they've had a few months to age and get ready to go to sleep. So I look forward to seeing you next Friday on Color Quest as we explore more of the changing seasons and the beautiful and changing colors that nature is willing to share with us. Have a great week. See you next Friday.